I'd like to call this meeting for the Parks Board to order. We'll start with a roll call. To my left,
Linda Coltoff.
Kelly Whitaker,
Keith Cecil.
Rhonda Ankney,
Roger Hitch.
All right, we'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Did everyone have a chance to look over the meetings from the meeting minutes, I should say, from last week? All right. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes, or is there any changes we need to make?
I'll make a motion to approve.
A second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Let's move to, I know we have a guest, so let's go ahead and before we move on to the other items, and I know we have Mr. Austin here to give us a report on the impact fee study.
Good afternoon, everyone. Austin and Hostetler, so good luck saying that one, but yeah, Hostetler. And so I'm working in coordination with Layman and Layman on the recreation impact fee, but then also the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And so I would like to take some moment of your time just to kind of brief you on kind of the process, what we've done so far, but then also have a little bit of a dialogue with you all, no more than 10, 15 minutes, just to try to get here at the beginning process of the master planning. It's always good to get context. So understanding about what are we moving towards, vision, goals, strengths, challenges. So that kind of conversation. So as part of the packet, we actually passed out a social and economic factors packet, if you will. I'm not going to necessarily go through it all, but the point being, this is the type of research that we'll start incorporating into the master plan. So we look at demographics and trends, and we produce technical reports. So this is like a technical report. We'll do one on stakeholder engagement. So interviews, focus groups, public meeting opportunities. This Wednesday, I'll be at the farmers market setting up shop and doing some interactive voting exercises with willing patrons through the area. And hopefully the weather holds out. I think we haven't had rain forever, and now it's like this week has a chance of thunderstorm like the whole rest of the week. Yeah, but we'll try. But I also know that the farmers market got extended, I think, to end of next month too. So I mean, we have other opportunities. So I'm planning on tomorrow, but I know that we have 4 or 5 other fail-safe opportunities to go out there and collect more input. But that'll be a technical report then. So what did interviews, focus groups, public meetings say? Then we'll go towards online community surveying. And then that'll be a technical report. And so the point being, I wanted to pass this out so you all understood kind of the depth and kind of the information sources that we pull and what the format kind of looks like when we kind of piece this together, because all these things kind of get pulled in together to make an overarching master plan. You kind of do the baseline, where are we, who are we as a community. We'll have to look at natural features, businesses, employment rates, natural features of the area. That all has to be described in the master plan. But then you go to a needs assessment phase, which is all about community engagement, vision, and all that. And then we'll end it with an action plan. So I just wanted to put that forward here. So really interesting information in here about population, about race, income, market research on like potential to actually engage in different types of recreation behaviors. This is all market research driven by, the company's name is Esri, the Environmental Systems Research Institute. They're one of the preeminent companies in the country that really look at, they pull a whole bunch of different data sources together and synthesize it down into creating their numbers and creating their projections So Roger and I were talking about this during the master plan process, and especially the recreation impact fee process. This population number, like right now, it's 8,781 people. I'm more interested in the trends on growth than the actual number. But during this process, we will actually get to a final number because that is what's required for the recreation impact fee. So we know census information is being rolled out, but like Esri, what they do is they look at the previous census, they look at American Community Surveys, then they also start bringing in national statistics from the Realtor Association and local market conditions. So that's how they come up with all their projections. So it's not just like us going to the American Community Survey and punching in and say, what's the estimate now this year based on, the census. There's a lot more that go into these numbers. So just wanted to provide you some context. So before I ask you some questions then, are there any questions about anything? If you happen to look at this beforehand or not, it's okay if you haven't. There's a lot of information in here, and you'll have more opportunities to kind of go through it. But like I said, it's population, it's age segmentation, it's household characteristics, race, ethnicity, household income, employment rates by industry, educational attainment, disability status, employment statistics, and then a bunch of fun, in my opinion, the last 3 pages, market potential information for your demographic and how you kind of stack up to like the national average when it comes to your local projected participation in consumption of recreation services, retail goods, spending power, all that fun stuff.
I was just curious on, I actually had some questions. I looked through, this is really cool, by the way. But so when you're asking the questions, for example, on the MPI, right?
Yep.
Are you asking like, what activities they're currently involved in, what activities they like, what activities they have an idea about?
Yeah.
There's a wide range.
Yeah. Exactly. And so this is a market research metric produced by Esri that looks at local consumer behavior, spending patterns, but also the demographic of a given area, which I uploaded town of Bargersville boundary. So it pulls information just from this boundary that I provided. And so basically this number is saying, based on your demographic and who lives and resides within this boundary, within your town limits, these are the potential of participating in these type of behaviors based on local spending and consumerism patterns and local demographic, just you can say kind of stereotype. Like it's based on local demographic of who lives within your community.
Okay.
And so weightlifting is 127. So the way that's read is you are 27% more likely to participate in that type of activity than the national average.
Based off the demographics.
Based on the demographics,
Okay.
yeah. So that's why, and that's a great question because I like to do this up front because if you take it in a vacuum, which you can, it's like, okay, well, what decisions do we want to make off this? Let's go. But this gives me a starting point to say, for example, I've worked in communities before where, and how I broke it out here, like let's just go down to sports. Like many of the sports are underneath 100, like they're just below the national average. That gives me as a researcher kind of a tip off saying, well, let's see if are sports actually a thing around here. Maybe they're not. Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. So this gives me some clues and some things that you need to be asking and reconciling or trying to figure out if this is actually true or not. So because I work in a lot of like soccer, 89 is the MPI for sport for Bargersville. So 11% less likely than the national average. I know national trends, soccer is trending upwards. And on a local level, maybe soccer is popular here. It's just that, again, based on demographics, the number says no, but then it's my job to kind of reconcile that, prove it, or, prove it otherwise.
I would be curious about regional as well, because so like when you look at national, like you're looking at tennis too, I bet if you took, you looked at, California and Florida and you took those, if we were in one of those states, it'd be, 100,000%.
Yes.
Based on the age there,
Yes.
here. So I'm curious if, because we have so many soccer facilities. I was kind of stunned to see that last.
Right.
Arguably, that's one of our largest facilities that we have here with lone football in the town.
Yep, exactly. And that's why I like to start here because it's kind of like it's a point of reference and you can start asking those questions like,
Got it.
That looks a little off to me who sees a lot of these numbers. Okay, that's different than what I've seen in other communities. But to your point, work in Florida, yeah, golf way up there, tennis way up there. Because again, it's based on demographics. But then it's like, is that really true? Then you go do research on the rounds of golf played, and it's like, okay, yeah, I can confirm that. That's true. And so that's why, yeah, we have a lot of soccer around here. So that's why I'm, I'll just give you my opinion without really validation behind it. It's like, yeah, I'm a little skeptical of that number. But this is where we get to see when we go to the community. All right, let's talk about sports. Let's talk about experiences. Let's talk about, and then to your point, say that becomes a need. Is that something that the town needs to provide, or is that some of the providers that are providing it? Is that maybe it's a need, but maybe it's a met need in the community, because there's a difference between the two. So
Maybe we're exceeding the need. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's very astute in how you look at these numbers
Okay.
and because again, like outdoor activities, the majority of them are over 100. To me, as a researcher, I look at that and say, well, that's good. There's a proclivity or potential just for outdoor recreation in general.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at kind of the grouping too, because otherwise, again, I worked in communities that way low, and it's like, okay, maybe getting people outdoors might be a harder slug than maybe I thought it was. Those sort of things. So, yeah.
What is ping?
Sorry.
Ping? Is it ping pong?
I think they left off.
Oh, ping pong. Yeah, that's probably me. That's probably me.
Oh.
Me sizing
I was
it.
trying to figure out.
It's that new activity, Ron.
Yeah. It could be anything though.
That would be my fault. Spent way too much time trying to get the size of that chart the exact same size as the other one, and I cut off the palm. So.
I might look into pickleball too.
Yes. In pickleball, actually, we have national trends for pickleball. So it's been around since I first heard of pickleball in 2012. And but in terms of a lot of these databases and market research, it's not there yet in terms of these kind of statistics. That they're on the national level. Pickleball is the fastest growing in terms of percentages. It's not golf. Actually, is still the number one, if I remember right, in terms of overall number of people that play. But in terms of percentage of growth, pickleball exceeds any other type of sport activity. But it's still a smaller number of people that play. But it's still the fastest growing.
I know it's growing very fast around here. We have, I work at a fitness center.
Mhm.
We have 6 courts 2 times a week. And there's
Yeah.
still people waiting to get onto the courts. So,
Yep. Yeah.
And then they play all at different places besides our place.
Yes.
I mean, some of them play daily.
Yes. Danville has a successful pickleball. Brownsburg just redid Stevens Park and put in more pickleball, and they have successful tournaments. My small hometown of Bremen up in northern Indiana, they just repaved the tennis courts, which are shared by the school. And now they have a very successful pickleball league because they're drawing now from Elkhart, Goshen, and all those places. And so it's urban and rural alike, that type of activity. Yeah.
So on some of this, on the numbers, is it based just by what they say they do, or is it like consumption within the county?
It's consumption. Yeah, it's consumption. It's local consumer reports. Esri, if you ever go on their website, you can type in Esri demographic methodology. They have methodology statements for everything that they produce, every metric, because they're, like I said, a kind of a preeminent source, so they need to stand behind all their numbers. So they produce one-pagers that basically say, here are the surveys or the type of surveys or the type of reports that go into the number that we provide. So they're basically a big synthesis database of all these things. Yeah.
Very cool.
All right. So yeah. So again, you'll have plenty of time to, look at this more, but this is the type of stuff that'll be kind of coming your way that I'll feed you. Because anytime I do a technical report, we'll kind of review it and then have comments and questions. Then we'll kind of pass it along, and you can kind of see this as we go. So that way, when we get to the end, there's no surprise. So then, if you wouldn't mind, just have a couple questions. I'd like to kind of have a discussion with you all. It's twofold, and I'm not doing this just because it is an Indiana Department of Natural Resources requirement, but it is. But I like to do this up front. Is basically I want to identify kind of your goals and visions for the next 5 years when it comes to Parks and Recreation Services. Because this helps me understand a little bit about what am I testing, what am I researching. I have my way of pulling information and looking at things, but I want to also hear from you all. And I already started my conversations with council members and asking them their vision. And then, like I said, Wednesday I'll be setting up shop up here, hopefully no rain, and then asking the community, starting that process. So wanted to ask you just a couple questions, and I'll lead towards a prioritization question. But first, I just wanted to know, what are your constituents or colleagues say about Parks and Recreation Services in Bargersville? And do you agree with their assessments and opinions? So basically, like, what are you hearing? Like, what are the needs? What are what's going well? What's the talk about Parks and Recreation Services, events, facilities, parks in Bargersville? We'll leave it open to that.
I think trails, I hear trails a lot.
'Cause you all have been spending, to my knowledge, from the last planning process in here, like really planning trails and implementing more trails. And so people like that. They also probably want to see continue.
Right.
Is that what you're getting at? Yeah.
100%. That's a huge one. Whether it's cycling or jogging or whatever the case, but having opportunity, whether it's painted lines, whether it's separate trails,
Mm-hmm.
just sort of having a plan. When you go to a lot of communities, you see that, that plan marked somehow or some capability for folks to be able to get out, get around, and get
Mhm.
active. I think it's something that we're missing, and I've heard from a lot of my neighbors and friends that just make it up on their own, right now. Which, some are safe, some kind of know what's going on, but I think as we invest in that, all that stuff will come to fruition. We'll have the access to those things, those maps and markings, safety guidelines in the community. We'll start to learn how to get started, how to do it
Yeah.
safely, all those things.
Yeah.
As we build it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I hear a lot of, and let's leave it there.
Yeah. Is it?
I would say that people tend to go elsewhere and do those.
Are they okay with that, or are they? That's a good
I
reminder.
have it out. No, I think that I've been here I've lived here my whole life. And we were used to doing that because we were just a small town, so you kind of went elsewhere to go to eat, go to
Mm-hmm.
shop, go to whatever. But I think that's kind of where we're changing. I mean, we want to still be small town feel, but we're definitely growing. And I think that's the piece that's missing. I think people are okay with that now, but I think as we continue to evolve or whatnot, that those are things people are going to look for, or may have a measure of unhappiness that they're still having to go elsewhere to find trails or bike paths or whatever.
Yeah. So it's almost this mentality of we are growing now. We can stay inside our borders for some of these things now. I mean, yeah, we're growing, so we can have some of our own facilities and amenities and things like that. That makes sense.
And I think as traffic, I think that's the other thing, right? Like just with Greenwood or going,
Mhm.
that as that becomes more difficult, which it is, and you don't want to have to go far to do those types of
Yeah.
things.
Okay.
Besides the trails and stuff, I'll go along with that. But
Yeah.
Things that I've heard is there's 3 parks now downtown Bargersville. Kip Park's coming, but there's nothing in the north, nothing in the west.
Yep.
Other things I've heard, some people didn't like them. Also, the future maybe a water park.
Well, along those same lines, let me stick with that theme. I was going to ask about, are there any underserved populations in the community? And that could be a demographic, that could be an age segment, that could be a geographic question, that could be a user group question. So underserved north and west, maybe dog owners and pet owners, maybe perhaps, or those attached to aquatics. What else? Are there any other type of underserved or unmet need areas?
I think like skate park is another thing. I think that age group where you get between young children up like to do the playground equipment,
Mhm.
and then we need a grown up and those kind of interests in that, some kind of interest in that middle school, high school age range.
That's one of the biggest questions I always get is, what do we do for teens? What do we do for teens? The schools kind of, honestly, encapsulate teenage. But if you're not in sports or you're not in activity, but then it's thinking, well, we always program, but they don't show up. It's often about creating the spaces because they want to go somewhere with their friends and it's social. It's really more about spaces than it actually is about programmed opportunities. So I know what you mean by these destinations, these kind of creating these social networking places.
You go to a skate park and 10% of the people are skating.
Right.
You're hanging out.
Right. I mean, right. That's, yeah, absolutely.
Nobody's actually skating.
Yeah.
I think one of the things we had going right pre-COVID, of course, were the concerts and the other activities that were planned downtown. That always seemed to draw a pretty good crowd, and I heard lots of good comments about those things as well.
Mhm.
So I think we were on the right path with that until the roadblock was thrown up.
Right. And so that was something that was kind of relatively new
I think
pre-COVID.
so. It was new to me anyway, but I'm fairly new to the community as
Sure.
well. So
Sure.
I know that it was very appreciated and I thought well attended when I came too.
Sure.
I kind of feel like we kind of had a little bit of that stuff when I was growing up, very fall festival, very specific and developed into more like once a month or whatever. And I also feel like when we had like the Disney train and we did a lot of stuff down here, that kind of, I don't know that it did, but I felt like it kind of gave momentum, like where people kind of took pride and it was like, we can do things here. And then we started doing more of those concerts and that's where you get that community camaraderie and stuff that I think people want to see or like.
Let me ask you this then. As I scribble camaraderie, I think that's how you spell it. We plan 5 years at a time. Obviously, when I'm doing population projections and any information that I collect during this master plan process, I'm not going to limit it to 5 years because if something comes up that it's going to take longer than 5 years to do, I'm still going to document it so that way, you all have decision making and longer vision. But let's talk about the next 5 years. How can I help you? Give me your goals. Like what would be your goals for this master plan process? What would be your definition of success? So that way I understand what your vision and goals are for this process. What do you want to get out of this process?
Should have given us pre-thought time.
Yeah.
I think
I know.
one of the things that I would say is to get out of that is kind of not necessarily a roadmap, but kind of justify the things that we would like to see that it makes sense. And yes, for example, we don't have a full-time parks person or whatever. And
Mhm.
we think, well, you need that. It's that the people that will come if you're not, like it's like legitimizing some of the things that we want to do. And I think we're just to that point where we just got that new housing development and that Sawyer Farms or whatever it is. Like if those things are big, right? And so it changes who we are and just kind of giving us that vision of how to grow like that because we haven't been that big.
Talking on the next 5 years, one of the things I'd like to see is Kip Park Park.
Yeah.
Up and going.
Agreed.
Maybe not the community center, because I don't know where the money's gonna come from for that, but get the shelter houses, get a playground, get,
Mm-hmm. Formalize it.
nature trails and something more than a weed kill.
Or a sign. That's part of the reason why I kind of was interested in getting on. My kids are like, when is that park coming? They're like
Yes.
13 and 10 now. They were
Yes.
7 and 10 or whatever. So
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I would really like to see a defined, I know it's difficult to do, but a defined trail system.
Mm.
I think that would be really cool to see. I don't think it would be hard to draw out with hopefully y'all's capabilities, but just something, here's what you could do, whether it's simply markings, whether it's new trails, a combination hopefully of two, but to give some feedback on that would be really cool. I don't know if that's possible, but, because I think that would help us to get some traction there. We just got a great grant and, and some progress towards some of that, and I think that could really be something cool that could come out in the next 5 years.
I think we're trending that way.
Phased in, yeah, whether it's simply markings now and then it moves to trail, whatever the case may be.
Right.
Some kind of progression would be cool to see.
Okay.
And I think we do need to look out beyond the central area for our parks. Because, the northern half of the area isn't served at all. And we have a concentration here locally, but I think we need to look outside the circle to extend our parks out farther into the community.
I think with the trails and that same thought process and outdoor activities, we talk about obesity and those kinds of things. If you have things, people are drawn and apt to do it. I know you go out to Colorado or whatever, and you see biking, hiking, mountain biking, whatever the case may be. And granted, we may not have mountains and amenities like that, but I think the availability is what inspires people to do things.
I know what you mean. Like, it's almost like the ethos or like the ethic too. Like I have a friend who's the assistant park director at Dakota County Parks in Minnesota. And I was up there visiting him about a month and a half ago. And their trail system, it's always off the road, but there's always big multi-use trail and everything. It's part of the ethic. Like it's part of the infrastructure. Like it's like it's part of the way, like the transportation, the get out, go do these kind of things. And so it's just incorporating more of that into it's the mindset, but it's more intentional with how we do things. So.
And when you talk about community and that kind of stuff, that breeds that, because you're all out and you're together. Get people cycling through here and moving, whether it's walking, and it really builds community, having those opportunity and that culture in the community. And I feel like we're not horribly far off from being able to do that kind of thing.
Especially being intentional where new development is happening. It's always more difficult to kind of incorporate, or at times incorporate things, but if we're forward thinking, hopefully we're being proactive on the new development areas.
Right. Okay. Anything else? Any other, and again, I know I'm kind of throwing this on you here, but it's not your one and only opportunity too. If you have other thoughts beyond this, I think I have enough cards, but if not, you can reach me and, or reach through Bethany or Julie, and then hold of me. Any other big goals or big visions that, the help me help you kind of thing? How could we talked about, roadmap, justifying what makes sense, legitimizing, do we need more staff? What do we develop? How do we grow? Completion of Kephart Park, maybe not necessarily the full total build out, but we're moving that along here in the next 5 years. And what does that look like? Defining the system. Here's all what you could do, for the trail system. That is a vision for how we reach beyond our downtown, using parks to define the community's health, but also this ethos or ethic of outdoor intentionality and how we integrate that. Those are big goals, which are good, but it's good.
5 years.
You asked.
I know. This is why I asked, because we have to start somewhere, and we build the short term, we build the intermediate, we build the long term. That's what I want to do with you all. Is what is it that we could do in the next 3 to 5 years? What is that we can do in the next 7 years? What is that we can do in the next 15 years? And these should be building off each other. So, anything else kind of pop into your minds at this moment in time?
I think in that like trails, and it's really a connectivity to the whole town, because we do have very structured town limits, but we are way bigger than town limits. So
Right.
even if connecting people to town, but also just connecting people to others, because you have these different little neighborhoods, and how do we make that a cohesive community?
And
Yep.
beyond that, connecting others to us too.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your time. I know it took up a little bit more than I thought I was going to take. But thank you for this conversation. And again, please reach out if you have any other ideas, or I always phrase it this way: if you have a strategy or an issue or a challenge that you want us to explore, or oh, we heard about this, and maybe just throw it to the consultant team, have them do something with it. That's our job. Just feed us information. Let us. I always say I can't analyze anything I don't have, so any information is good information as far as I'm concerned. So this won't be the last time you'll hear from me. So appreciate the time today, and we'll be updated along the way. And stay tuned. So
Thank you.
thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I say we move right down the line to our Legacy Plaza topic.
Legacy Plaza.
Yes.
I'm learning to say that.
Plaza.
Then when I say it, I'm like, will anyone know what I'm talking
Yes.
about? So, I've worked this past month along with Bethany. I'm getting quotes on on the signs for our Legacy Plaza. And we've stayed with the same idea as the signs in the other parks. At first I was like, maybe we should look for one similar to what we may think the future signs for the town would look like. And then the reality that if we get a new sign now, it may be old by the time the other signs are here. So it's my recommendation that we move forward with a sign for our Legacy Plaza. We know that there's a need for one based on the location not being marked at all. And if we can get a sign going, then maybe that's a good starting point for awareness and letting the community know that, the pavers are available, or it's a good spot just to perform or to obtain some form of a legacy when you purchase a paver or whatever you'd like to do in that area. Our 2 sign estimates came in from Everywhere Signs, and for something identical, essentially, to the signs that are at the parks now, it'd be a double-sided sign on 2 4x4 posts. For Everywhere Signs, their estimate was $42.85. And Image 360, who is a company I think currently does a lot of the decal work and things for the town on their vehicles, they came in at $5,800. Everywhere Signs did the sign at Witt Park, I believe, so they do have some experience. I'm not sure about the other signs at the other parks. I believe they're also the ones. So they would be familiar with the processes and things that we need for that sign.
So when it says like 2 single-sided, are they just back to back, so it looks?
Yeah, they're kind of, the way they look like from the others, they're just sandwiched onto those.
That's what I thought, I just
4x4
making sure it
posts.
was 2
Yeah.
separate.
I mean, we could have one-sided signs, I guess, installed on different 4x4 posts, but that area is so small and be
Yeah, I
concerned
understand.
about.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, that
Yeah.
one.
It'd be identical to what was at Windish right now. If you drive by Windish, it's 2 signs with posts in between.
So, and I'm just raising this as well, but, and I'm assuming we would be, if you're looking at the photo, the photo, it's just past the stuff. I'm assuming we're looking at a couple options on location that you thought through for this sign. Are you thinking like around number 6 and around that first bush, or where would this potential sign go?
It's a good question. I mean, we'd want it visible from either direction going east and west, I think. We may not have to worry too much about a north and south view at this point.
Right.
but just in east and west view.
So I'll just say that, I do want to say this, we've had some email complaints, and I agree 100% that when you're turning out of there, I mean, all that stuff is it is, you do have, there is a bit of a challenge seeing, where you're going. And so my question would be, plus just with the aesthetics of it, I would be curious what the measurement is by number one, and to make it also an ingress, as opposed to two posts that are, all the other signs are roughly 2 foot above the ground, and then you got another 2 feet, which is basically, if you're in a car, right where you
Right at
can't
your
see
view,
through.
yeah.
But literally to go to the ground with it would be my thought, if we would do a sign, because I would be concerned about visibility. I actually would be really curious, I don't know if you guys have permission to speak, but being folks that drive in and out of here all the time, probably, what are your thoughts on putting a sign there, and where would it go, all that, and driver visibility, those kind of things? What have you all heard on that?
So I think that you are correct in that the area, on the end where I'll say, the alley end of the plaza, is a little bit challenging with the current design of the plantings. I'm not sure where, if you wanted, where the number 1 is on that diagram there. So that location, as a driver, you're coming up to a stop sign. So that's kind of a different situation. And if you're pulling out of that drive, that's not where the traffic would be, that you would be looking at. Because the traffic would be coming from the opposite direction of where that sign would be. If you kind of look at that diagram.
So looking at it, then if we were to place it on the east end by the
Yeah.
stop sign behind, or this side of the stop sign then, right there where essentially that number 1 bush is,
Yeah,
right along the sidewalk between I guess right in that little corner of those 2 sidewalks.
like there.
Yeah, right along the edge of that sidewalk area.
Otherwise, if you're on the other end, it's a little more challenging with the way that the driver's looking.
Well, and this location would be good too for people who are visiting the town hall, or, I mean, it's a more visible location, I think, for the sign.
Right.
Either where we gather, where the farmer's market is, where, we have concerts, those kinds of things.
Or as another option, instead of where 1 is, where 8 is, where those little bushes are. Because it's a narrower spot, so you could still do something landscape-wise to the east of it and to the west of it, and you have a narrow strip where those bushes are, where those little bushes are.
Right.
So that may be a potential spot where 8 is on
So
that.
I'm horrible with directions, so you would do it like that.
Except I think it would be
It,
turned the other way.
Okay.
I would face it north and south though,
Oh, would you?
I think, don't you? Instead of east
From
and
a
west?
visibility standpoint, I mean, I think that would be safer, but I don't know that we would get as many folks looking at it that way.
Yeah.
One thing though too, you have to face north and south. Without measuring, I have a feeling that the sign's gonna be hanging over the sidewalk or the bricks.
Right. Given that size, and that was my point, Mr. Yeah.
If it's a
Mr. Hicks.
50-inch sign,
I agree 100%.
So if we put it in the corner next to the sidewalk,
I think we need to measure.
You don't think that gap is wide enough there either?
I don't, but I
That one.
think it's gonna look really silly, because it was, I mean, I could be wrong, but I think we ought to measure. I mean, you're talking about like, that whole, I think that whole area would be covered by a sign. That's my concern.
Right.
I think it would overwhelm the space and look disproportional to the area. I think, I mean, if we were stuck on a 50-inch sign, to me, the only place that would really make sense is 5. I mean, and going
Isn't
along.
50 the height?
No, it's 50 inches wide, 30 inches tall.
Oh,
I mean, that's not quite as big as that bench, but it's on the track to that.
Well,
I know you put a lot of work in this, and
no,
you're trying to
no,
muddy the waters,
I wanna
but
do
I
it
just,
right,
yeah.
yeah.
The only thing about doing it with 5, unless you get some lot smaller bushes and stuff in front, you're not gonna be able to see it from the road.
I don't hate the idea of it being like right there in that little corner of the sidewalk, even if we took out some of the landscaping, because it's kind of, I mean, it's a kind of a trail, it's almost like signifying like, oh, here's where it starts. But maybe, can we scale it and make it a little bit smaller?
I don't know what it would do visually, as far as if you're driving by, how much you'd be able to read from the road.
So I agree that we need to measure, get a visual of what that would look like there, but if we took it to 30,
I think we go ahead with the sign, just need to figure out where to put it.
with the sign as is.
There's always possible to put it here at 6 and 7, or by 6, and put smaller stuff in with it.
Yeah, I mean, some of that stuff
Somebody said-
come out no matter what.
I think we need to go out and physically measure and see.
I'm envisioning these plants, I mean, because that little tree is gonna be big one of these days.
I mean, we might be merging conversations now, because I do think that the landscape, you know, like,
Oh, yeah.
so I'm almost envisioning that just like, okay, let's keep the brick and let's just envision it, forget the landscaping, like don't even, you know what I mean? And just, where would a sign fit in there? And how big should that be? And, you know, when you're thinking about safety, that's where my head's at. I don't know about you guys, but so I'm kind of, in my head, I'm thinking a monument style seems like a good option if we're gonna go with a wider sign, like one that's low to the ground. Seems like a reasonable, you know, if we're going with looking at a 50-inch option or something like that, 40 to 50 inches, or a single post seems like a single post 24. If we want it vertically, I think would be scalable to that area. That's just that being in that business, that's personal opinion. You know, just try not to have the sign overwhelm the space is my only thought.
So, I mean, is it time, should we consider a different style of sign?
Well, going back to your point, if we're gonna replace them all anyways, and they're only gonna last 5 to 10 years, does it matter if they match? I don't know. I mean, I'm just posing a question.
From
Go ahead,
Yeah,
please.
from a branding standpoint, it's good to have a similar sign throughout the entire system, because then as a user, you know that you're in this particular entity's parks. Like, if you even went outside of signs, Centerville, Washington Park District in Ohio, every time you enter a park, there's a wooden structure on either side that's painted black. So that's their symbol that you are in their park. So I would just say, whatever your symbol is that notifies a person that you are in a town of Burnsville park in that brand, I would go with that. So typically it's a similar sign look.
Which is an awesome point, and I think we're getting there, but I don't even know that we have that yet. So I think we're working on that. Isn't that right, Julie? We're working on some branding stuff.
That is correct.
What's the time frame on that? What do you know yet?
The request for proposals to hire the firm is out right now, so we have not hired a firm at this
Okay,
time.
but once they're hired, how long would it be before?
I would say it's at least a 6-month, I don't know, maybe a 12-month process to go through the full.
So perhaps within a year to year and a half, if not sooner. And if that's the case, we might as well look at what they're doing, because we're gonna have to rebrand the other parks at the same time, or when it all comes about.
It's how money goes. I mean,
Right,
the rebranding, you can't just.
well, I know, but eventually it's, you know, if we're gonna keep it on, like he said, so that they know that they're in our parks.
Right. I get that, and I think branding on a cycle basis makes a lot of sense, just to me. I don't know how we're gonna do it, if we're gonna just bite it, go for it. But, or if we're gonna, you know, when this sign gets old, we put a new one in, and, or if we get this on the cycle, you know, there's different ways you can go about doing it.
I've seen both.
So, you know, seems to me like we would land on that end of it, but I don't know. So the question is, should we just get a sign up and move on and start raising it? You know what I mean? I don't, you know, or are we stuck? We've made this much momentum, you know what I mean?
Here we go on the signs again.
I feel like we just, you know,
Jump in?
get a small sign, put it on a post and move on. And that's my thought, you know, but I don't know what you guys think.
I like the idea that it would look similar.
You do?
That's why I wonder if there's scalability that we can do.
What if we did like colors and maybe a lesser material and work with something that looked similar but might not be like a sandblasted wood $4,000 sign? You know what I mean? So that when the branding initiative comes about, then we invest in that. Like, because you could make a sign that's looks really similar to that one and not do a double-sided sandblasted wood sign that's gonna get old in 5
But
years.
if you're gonna put it where the signs are facing that street in this building, would we really need the backside of it? Because the only one that's gonna see the backside of it are when we're looking out this window, or anyone parked along here or walking through there.
Well, my initial vision was that it would like,
Right.
when you're
Either
driving
direction.
this street, you can see it from
Right.
either direction.
That's what I thought you were talking about too.
But once you decide for sure where it's gonna be and how it's gonna be positioned, if it's gonna be positioned facing the street, is it really necessary? to
No,
have
we wouldn't
two-sided?
need a two-sided if we put it in that direction.
I would be curious what you guys thought about like having a post sign, you know, 18 by 24. You know, we could do it in that same size as, you know, color scheme as the other parks. Just on, you know, right there, you see it both ways. And I think it would be striking, even though it would be small. I don't think you need a lot because you're going, you know, 10 miles an hour on that road. You know, that you have time to see, you know, to see a small sign. And being new, it's all, you know, people are going to see it the first, you know, 5 or 6 times they drive past it, and they're never going to see that sign again. You know, it just becomes part of the blends in. And then we can do it quick, cheap, and easy. Just a thought.
I'll let you guys decide. I'm too personally involved in this.
I understand that.
Or we could take some time to think about it and, you know, table it for next meeting too.
Mhm.
Come up with some ideas. Would it be helpful? I can try to get, that's a good photo. We could try to get I got some graphic designers that could try to like put some boxes on there to show us from a scale standpoint what that would look like, if that's helpful. Is that what we're stuck on, is what it would look like out there?
Sounds like it, yeah. I mean, I want it to be big enough to be effective to where you don't drive by it and go, what was that? I mean, I want you to be able to see it as you approach it. But I don't want it to be obtrusive either.
Intrusive, right. Or be so large that it eats the space up.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that would help me. I don't know about you guys.
Is that something that you could bring to next month's meeting then?
I can try. I think we can pull that off. I'll take some measurements. Yeah, I think we can do that.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
And I'll send you the
That
picture.
photo,
the
okay.
JPEG.
The email info. Thanks to Bethany and our police department and their drone. Those photos were courtesy of them.
Excellent. I'll try to get some street level too, which might be more helpful.
The shrubbery is what's out here now, but what it was supposed to look like.
Okay. Anything else on the sign proposals? Thank you for grabbing those. Thank you, Bethany. Okay, let's hop over to the budget before we come back to the landscaping maintenance. Or anything on the budget?
I didn't have any concerns.
Okay.
Only one thing I noticed that sticks out again is one of the roundabouts, the water usage is still the minimum. I don't know about that. If that one, sprinkling system's working or not working.
I just don't think it's being utilized right now.
Oh, it just hasn't been turned on.
Correct.
Okay. Because I know the other one's $54 and
Yeah.
$45 last month.
I just don't think it's being used.
And this doesn't specify which one. They both say Whiteland Road.
All right. How about let's hop back over to the landscaping maintenance issues. So you sent an email out, Bethany, about that,
And
that's
then
right? And they're not getting back to us on that.
I have not received any sort of response, no.
Okay, what do you think would, based on that, I mean, should we try to get a meeting with them scheduled? Or, that's my thought, I don't know what you guys think, but I walked, I took my kids to Switzer and walked around there for a little, or Windish, I was calling it, anyhow, to Windish, and, I mean, those bushes are literally in the path, over halfway into the path. It is, you almost have to walk into the grass to get around the area.
And there's more weeds in it than,
And there's weeds everywhere.
and when I did the inspection yesterday, it was just horrid. And I don't know, does the landscaping people do the mowing over there?
No, that is
We
the
do.
street department.
Okay, because a lot of the weed eating had not been done around the benches and the reading posts and the playground around the black skirting around it. There's weeds galore. There, but like you say, the flower beds are horrible.
It's not a good look.
No.
Yeah, it's not a good look.
This is one thing on the flower beds. If I'm not mistaken, as I remember in the contract, only thing in there on the flower beds is spring maintenance and fall maintenance.
No, I think there was weeding every 2 weeks included in that, wasn't it?
Monthly
Monthly?
at the parks.
Well, looking back at our inspection reports, I think all of us have mentioned the weeds every single time from the April report forward, the weeds have always been mentioned. So even if it wasn't monthly, one of us would have said, hey, the weeds have been pulled.
Right.
And I don't think that's happened at all. Bethany and I met with Jennifer Petgen, P-E-T-G-E-N. She is a master gardener. I contacted the Purdue Extension Office and they referred her to us. And it turns out that when Windish Park's beds were new and the new perennials and things were planted, she cared for those in the beginning and did watering and stuff to get those established. So she's familiar with what's planted there and what has taken over. And we absolutely have a mint invasion. I don't think that the mint was ever planted by anyone who was in control of the flower bed. So I don't know if they were brought there by birds or if people have donated plants. I don't know what the case there is. But let's refer to our photos.
Some mint julep fans.
We have enough to have quite the party, but I don't think that's what we want to do. On the photo marked east, you can see the eagle there on the far right. That whole entire bed is infested, essentially, for lack of a better word, with mint. It's just taken over. Her comment was essentially, you have to get that out of there if you're gonna have anything grow, because it's very invasive. And then it comes on around into the northeast photo number 2. It's essentially all the way up into that corner where I don't know if that's a maple tree, but right in the corner across from the bench. It's kind of maybe stopped at that point so far anyway, because as you come on around into the other photos, photo 3 marked north, it's not too bad in that area. Is that correct, Bethany, you recall? It's not too thick through there yet. And many of those plants that are existing there were intentional, but the weeds have taken over to the point where they are not flourishing, the weeds are. So they're choking out essentially any actual plants that were there. And then on to photo 4. This is the northeast corner, that back corner, closest to the property lines over there for those houses. There are some intentional plants that are still thriving in there, but again, the weeds are taking over and what is there is overgrown and unkept. And you can see along even the pavers there, I think it's the weeds that are holding the pavers up. So maybe they do have a purpose, I don't know. Laugh or cry, but again, this is very weed infested. And then the last photo 5, is just a disaster. There's nothing, there's a few lilies in there, daylilies in there that are surviving, but as you can see, they're very stressed because of the weeds and things. And then I think that's a little redbud tree on the left-hand side there. It's full of, we always call them suckers. I don't know what you call them technically, but those all need to be cut and trimmed out or that tree is gonna choke out. So we're in a position to where any plants that we had in there that were thriving are no longer thriving because of the weeds. And there are things in there that essentially are gonna completely take over and kill everything because they are so invasive. So it wasn't a good prognosis. Did you have that opinion, Bethany, that it wasn't a good prognosis for saving much in there because of the invasion of the different types of weeds and that mint? I remember her making the comment, you're better off just starting over.
Yeah.
I
So
didn't see much that could be salvaged when we were over there
I mean-
yesterday.
Mm-mm.
Grass. That's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, I would vote for very small beds around maybe some of the existing trees and planting grass and trying to not maintain an area that large.
Yeah, that, way too much.
Agreed.
It's unfortunate that it's gotten out of control as bad as it is, but I honestly think at this point, there's no turning back.
I agree.
I agree. So what does everybody think about getting an estimate on
A rip and tear.
a rip and tear?
Well, one thing, before we do that,
Yeah.
we need to specify
What
what
it
we
is?
want, because we're gonna get five different estimates on five different designs and.
Yes.
At this
So
point,
maybe
I
she
think we're
could-
maybe at a management point where we just clear it out. There's nothing we're gonna be able to do this year.
Yeah.
If we get it cleared out this fall and can get some kind of, I don't know if a weed control or a ground clear, something on it to where maybe next spring we can start over. I don't know if the weed clear, I mean, I think we would need a reputable landscaper or someone to tell us, here's what we can take out, here's what we can put on it so that next spring you can start over, essentially, with the grasses and the smaller beds. So I think our first step would be to just get that number of what it's gonna cost to clear that out.
And pull all the mulch and all that stuff. I mean, that would be, it's all overgrown. I can't tell what's good and what's not. I mean, I'm not only, I don't know what you guys think, but it just looks, it's hard to even,
That's terrible.
it's terrible. Yeah.
And you can't even pretend that it's naturalized.
Yeah,
It's
no.
so bad.
I'm not agreeing with that part, but as far as taking all the mulch out, you've gotta be careful to keep the mulch at the grass, ground level in back and the trail level in front, otherwise we're gonna have a water hole.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. Or at least that, if there's any backfill dirt that we need to put in to,
Yeah, because if you're gonna
Right.
plant grass,
Well, it depends
You
on
need dirt anyway.
if it's gonna be grass or mulch next year, we haven't determined where it's gonna be grass and where it's gonna be flower beds.
yeah. Yeah, but we'd have to get it all out of there anyhow, because there's all that, there's all these hills and stuff in it too. It's not
Yeah.
level, so,
But that's what I said, they can take it out level now, then next year, when we put the topsoil in where we want to mulch and take it out, where we want grass and.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. So who do we call about that? We just call some landscaping companies, is that what we're thinking? Well, the other thing we have to do is figure out, can we pay for this too, I mean, is this something that we can, well, I guess wouldn't know until we got an estimate.
I think removing
Community
it
day,
would take care of the need for the pavers around the drive as well. I mean, if we put grass along that edge, then we would
100%.
have the paver concerns.
that's what I'm thinking. Pavers, mulch, level it, all
Just
that
white-
stuff.
white
Yeah,
sort
just
of-
grass. Yeah, like I said, my son and I, we go here and we kick around, the ball goes rolling into those weeds and everything. So I don't think it would be bad to just have extra space there. I don't know, I mean,
like Rhonda said, there's plenty of trees right along there that you could plant beds around that, or maybe in between two trees. But just not that huge thing all the way around the end.
Yeah.
I mean, we could even put a couple of picnic tables over there, maybe.
Yeah, it's
you know.
definitely space that can be utilized.
maybe in that corner, you could put a little, one of those little gazebos or something. Yeah.
The other couple that I spoke to the last time I inspected over there, they suggested a gazebo someplace in the facility.
So then, is it worth, is it worth our time? I mean, I don't want to waste some landscaper's time to come out and give us a number on that. Right? I mean, would that be a waste of time to get somebody to give us a quote on pulling all that stuff out,
Hey, we gotta do it sometime.
right?
They're gonna have to schedule us in. If
Really, is that something Brian can do with his backhoe?
We can ask.
Since we're taking everything out and just, cutting it down level with the ground.
Yeah, it may be an option.
Cheaper than hiring somebody.
Yeah.
So shall we table it until Julie can find out from him until the next meeting, if it's feasible for him to do it? And then if not, we'll have to look into getting some estimates.
That's fair.
This is one thing I'm getting estimates. I noticed on one thing before, some of the contractors that didn't get the bid this year, they said, we're too busy with our.
Yeah, no calls.
To give you an estimate.
Yeah, sure. That's what I was saying about just getting estimates. I hate to do that to somebody if we don't have a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the alternative to not getting estimates? Just
Well,
hire someone?
well, I don't know. So then maybe that leads into option 4, which, I mean, or maybe not. Let's just go ahead and merge the two. So I did contact. I go to Mount Pleasant and did reach out to. I know Amber who sent that email out saying that we might be able to have some folks from the youth program at Impact Southside. And I have reached out to Parker, who's in charge of that program, about a couple dates in October, October 16th and 23rd, to see if either of those would work for them to come. And I just arbitrarily decided that we just, it seemed overwhelming to do too many parks. So I think this park is just too much. It's a problem. We got weeds everywhere and plenty of work to do there. So I suggested to him that, we have a cleanup day at that park on either of those days, and he was going to look and get back to me on that.
Yeah.
So
That's the Old South Side Impact.
Old South Side Youth Program, that they have young men that,
Right.
Yeah.
Mount Pleasant has 2 or 3 different outreach facilities. And this one, the it's on the South Meridian.
Yeah.
And they have pretty good youth activity there, and they try to find different things for them to do. It's a pretty devastated area up in that, the kids need a lot of insight and training and so forth, which would help them learn at the same time.
I think it'd be a great day. Get out in space, do some work, pull some weeds, and
Feed them some hot dogs.
some hot dogs. Yeah, that's same fun. Yeah, I think it'd be great. What do you guys think about that? But I just went ahead and made the call because
That's good.
try to get the ball rolling. It's because I knew this was going to cost some money, so I thought, well, why not go ahead and try to at least set that up? And if we move forward with this, well, then we'll just have
And if he
benches or whatever.
comes back with a number that you think we're gonna need more than that number, because I don't know how many of those kids would be active to come down. The youth activities there at the church itself is tremendous, and they could probably do an interactive thing. We can check into that and see if we need to.
Yeah. My kids go to 5678 too. We
Oh,
can
yeah.
get them down here. That's what I mean. Combine that, but if we get some help and then we put it out to the community as well. And we,
Yeah.
but that's what I was trying to get is, okay, when can you guys come so we get a good amount of folks?
Yeah.
And then we focus on getting the community on the day that they can,
Good idea.
that was my thought on that. So when we lead into discussion point 4 there, that was the update on that. We don't have a date yet, but I'm trying to move forward a little bit on that on those 2 dates. So
I think you have one more thing on landscaping. if
yeah,
we're-
sure. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I think we need to figure out who's gonna kind of be like maybe a project lead on it. And if we have a lot of people coming out to help, that's great, but like if you're pulling stuff out do we have a truck, or where are we putting it, where are we hauling it, those kinds of things. I think it's something we still need to kind of
We got to figure out what we're
figure
doing.
that out.
Exactly, yep. But trying to get a date, we've already
For sure.
started. Yes, I agree with you 100%. Then we get into logistics of, okay, hey, what are we going to do here? That was the next move, you know, and what we would need, whether it's paint, whether it's trucks, and try to get, you know, folks to figure out what the town has and then let's move forward from there. But, okay.
There is another meeting at
Yeah.
6:30.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
or if you got a 5-minute warning to.
right.
So back to our landscaping,
Yeah.
back to Legacy Plaza, if you look at those photos, the plants I've numbered, and I've kind of, in my little app on my phone to identify the plants, so I don't know that these are 100% accurate on the names of the plants, but it gives you an idea of what we have in there and what they will look like in a few years. They only get bigger from where they are now. So I would like to propose that we remove some of these plants, some of them that are gonna be more aggressive growers and some that are just plain old ugly. And again, when we were with Jennifer that day, she said that the Russian sage, the number 4, is an aggressive spreader and grower. So that's probably not the best plant to be in there. The number 2s are those flopped over bushes with the purple pods. Those get bigger. You cut them back every year, but they come back to this shape every season. I think those could probably go. Our butterfly bush is right next to that little maple tree in there. It's probably gonna be bigger and wider than that tree, so it's always gonna cover. And then the,
Rhonda,
mhm,
not to stop you, but the 3 you just mentioned,
uh-huh.
those all 3 are invading into the sidewalk anyway.
Yes, they
so-
are, they are. That was my next point, is that they're the ones who are causing the most problems with the sidewalk and the traffic view.
And number 7 is supposed to get up to 10 foot tall.
Yes, if
I
that's,
think that needs to go then.
if it's the right plant. I mean, it's kind of small right now to
It
think that
is.
as mature, as old
You
as
won't be
it
able to
is, that it's
see,
only
though.
that big. Yeah. And I think she did say that that one was trimmable, that you could shape
Oh.
it to, and keep it at a certain height.
Hmm.
After it, it's not big enough now to really trim, but it is something that if we did leave it, it could be trimmed and maintained to a certain height rather than trying to just let it grow.
Hmm.
So I mean, the dwarf lilacs are on each corner. There's 2 different views of it, but they're on each corner. I think in another year, they will both be issues as well for vision and for the sidewalks. So based on my conversations with Jennifer, it looks like the number 1s, number 2s, number 3,
Mhm.
um,
You already said
and
4.
number 4 should go out completely. And then the other plants may be manageable. And then that too will open up the view to the bubbling rocks as well. Right now, they're kind of invisible. And it would pull them back off of the sidewalks and out of the view
Make more room for our sign.
and make more room for our sign. And I think maybe Brian could take care of those for us, or we could ask him to anyway.
I did speak with him, he said that he would be willing to help with that.
Okay. So I think the ugliest one to remove, or the toughest one to remove, will be that Russian sage, the number 4. So it might need some ongoing removal, but if we get landscape help in there that will do that, it should be manageable. We won't have to do a complete gut on that one.
Anything you need from us in order to make that happen?
Just you're okay.
Okay.
By consensus.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else, Rhonda? That's all great stuff.
Oh, I think that's good.
Okay. Anybody have anything new to bring up? Right. Well, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn. We all agree.
Second. All right. All in favor?
Aye.